When I did circle time in the classroom, I bought a resource on Teacher Pay Teachers that had a whole bunch of would you rather questions. And we used that to become comfortable with each other and to figure out how circle was going to work and set our expectations. And then very quickly, I worked on encouraging students to come up with their own questions. And boy, they did not disappoint. They loved coming up with questions. We had a little box where they'd write it on an index card and submit it with their name. And I would proofread them to make sure they weren't too inappropriate. My bar for being inappropriate is probably set very low compared to some teachers because I have the humor of a 10-year-old and think things are funny just like they do. So I would let stuff slide that other people might not have. And I feel like it just brought us closer together. We had some inside jokes. So when we went virtual, I used a Google form. Students, we had used this in class for science, so they were familiar with it. And I'm an expectation kind of girl, so I always had the expectation out there. And the drama triangle was something our counselor had worked with our students at our school, and so I tried to use that same language, and they knew what I meant. I wanted to know their first name. One, if they submitted something that had a question about their question, I could go to them. And two, when I put the question on Flipgrid, my audio said their name, and then I also typed their name so that they could see that, you know, their question was the one and everybody could see who asked that question. We were departmentalized, so I wanted to know the homeroom. It just helped me sort a little faster. And then they would type their question, and we got so into circle time that they started coming up with criteria for their questions. And we had students who got really annoyed when people would say or. So they really didn't like that, or they'd say, well, I'd go into video game and be this character and say or. So students started writing like no going into video games, no saying or, no doing this, no doing that. We had one student that had two alter egos, Mama Penny and Padaski. So if you see Mama Penny, it was because he would say, well, Mama Penny says, just so he wasn't the one saying or. So they started writing like Mama Penny can't answer or Mama Penny can answer. It was really fun. And the last thing that I just recently found a few minutes ago or thought of is if you're teaching younger students who might not type well, you can see if their family will record them in a video or maybe an audio file so you could hear what their question is and they can add that file. It'll automatically go into your Google Drive. You can listen to it, type in the question for them, still give them that credit and say their name, but then you could just delete it out of your drive so that it's not taking up space. So that's just an idea. I didn't use that, but I might use it this year for an accommodation for some of my students. And then I would just tell them thank you for making our classroom a better place. So I'm happy to share this with you. It's not super fancy, but if it gets you started with circle time, I'd love to share. I always took the responses and downloaded them as a spreadsheet. And this is what our spreadsheet looked like. We started March 23rd was our first circle time question that they had submitted. And you can see that sometimes they submitted questions that were about class or something in general and not circle time. So what I did was I right-clicked and I added a column to the left of their name, and I did everything by date for Flipgrid. You'll see in the following videos that date is how I organized everything. And I went through and just decided what day am I going to post this question. And I would read, and sometimes questions would be very similar. So I decided like this one was both about spring break. So I gave both students credit and said today's question comes from blank and blank, and they want to know. And then I decided to post it on the same day. Sometimes a student would write something and I had a question, so I would get with them and clarify, and then I would post other questions, and then finally when I had an open date, I'd go back and put theirs. So it might bother some people that these dates are out of order, but it didn't bother me because I at least knew when I was going to post it. Another thing you'll notice is it's gray. The reason it's gray is because as I went along, I would highlight in a different color the ones I had already finished. So then my brain only focused on the white ones that I did have to still upload. So just as an example, for student privacy, I'm going to make everything black, but I would go and say, okay, I finished uploading these to Flipgrid. I'm done. Now, the next week when I sit down to do it, I just need to focus on these questions. And I would keep doing that, and that helped me stay organized. So again, Google Forms, I used it so that they had ownership of the questions and I was able to give them credit and record their name in the audio. And then they had fun seeing their question pop up on a certain day. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with for Circle Time.